Hello, thanks for joining me on our YouTube channel today. And we are going to be talking about the Proverbs 31 woman, especially as it relates to us in this empty nest season of life, as empty nest women, as empty nest moms. And for years, we probably had a lot going on. There was a lot of noise in our house. We were cooking a lot of meals. We were organizing and strategizing how to get everyone where they needed to be at a certain time. And now things have quieted down. We buy groceries, we fill up the pantry and the fridge, and it stays full for a while because it's probably just ourselves and our husbands coming in and out and making meals. And maybe some of the parts of Proverbs 31, where it talks about her being rising before dawn, her lamp not going out at night. We're not having to keep those hours now, again, because it's just ourselves and our husbands. We're not parenting on a daily basis now. And sometimes we can feel like, what now? What next? What do we do? And maybe we think, well, those days of being that virtuous woman, the Proverbs 31, doing all that action, those are over. But actually, I would say Proverbs 31 doesn't retire. It just shifts our focus. And we're not going to be looking back with longing here or seeing the empty nest now season as this big void. But there's going to be a divine repurposing if we look into this. And we're going to take some of the information today that we know about the Proverbs 31 woman, and we're going to specifically apply it to this season of life. This is where this virtuous woman, she transitions from managing a busy household to orchestrating a life of purpose and influence. That's what we want to have. So we're shifting from that active mothering to wise mentoring and support. So let's look at 3 different ways that this plays out in our lives. And the first one is ministering to our husband. I like verse 11 of Proverbs 31. It says, "The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil." Or in other versions it says, "He shall have no lack of gain." And we want our husbands, hopefully this has been the case all along, but we want our husbands to have complete trust in us and in our role in increasing his honor. And so let's look at 3 ways we can do this. First of all, a financial partnership. And again, hopefully this has been going on all along. You have been informed about what's going on with your family's finances, but now you have more time to focus on this. This is a joint effort as you consider your savings, your retirement, your estate planning. And you can bring a wise perspective to this. You can study and learn more if you haven't before, so that you can be a real partner to your husband in this area. And then also, of course, in encouraging and in honoring our husbands. I like verse 12 that says, "She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life." So Proverbs 31 woman in this stage of life, she is a constant source of good to her husband. Maybe he has some fewer professional demands than he did at other stages of life, but whatever he's got going on, we can be his biggest cheerleader. Maybe he's trying a new hobby, some volunteer work, or a second career. Maybe he's switching jobs now that there's not all the pressures of providing for the family that there were earlier. But we want to continue to respect and affirm our husbands. Again, just being his biggest cheerleader in whatever he has going on, and of course, praying for him, for God's guidance, for God's wisdom in his life. And then thirdly, companionship. The kids are gone. We certainly spent a lot of time on bleachers in the gymnasium or outside on the soccer field, in the stands cheering our kids on. And now a lot of that stuff is over. So we have more time to spend with our husbands. So we want to cultivate a friendship. We want to do those things that bring us closer as we spend more time together. So I've got a few practical applications for these. First of all, it might be a good idea to schedule maybe a quarterly, every 6 months meeting where you talk about the state of the finances, and the two of you kind of go over together. You look at what are our financial goals? How are we doing towards meeting those? What does our planning look like for the future? Are we going to do anything in supporting our kids now? Maybe they're out and doing fine, but you want to do things with them, travel with them. So to sit down, make a schedule, and periodically sit down and talk over those things together. And then I like this one, a daily or a weekly, what are you excited about conversation? Maybe once a week, sit down together and talk about, do you have any new pursuits, or are there hobbies that you want to check into? What is exciting you right now about our lives, or something we could do that would get you excited? And then have each week a block of time. We could call it your companionship time. And that could be a date night, or it could be as simple as on Saturday mornings, getting up and having coffee together and talking. Or again, it could be going out, doing something like that, or just taking a walk after supper once a week. But anything that allows you, the two of you, just to build that friendship and maybe take a class together. That would be a lot of fun too, growing in new areas as, again, it's just you and your husband now able to spend more time together. So that's ministering to our husband. Then let's look at ministering to our adult children. And here we want to leave a legacy of wisdom. Verse 27 says, "She looketh well to the ways of her household and eateth not the bread of idleness." And as we've said before, again, we're not going to be involved in our children's lives on a daily basis like when they were living in our home. But we're not providing that daily care, but we can be giving strategic wisdom and then supporting them emotionally and in whatever way we can. So 3 things under this point. Speaking wisdom and kindness. Verse 26 says, "She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness." And I would love to have this said of me to be characterized this way. It isn't always, but I do pray that it will be. And this is the core of our ministry to our adult children. We're not stepping in and giving unsolicited advice. We're waiting to be asked. And then when we are asked, we're offering wisdom that is truthful, but it's also kind. We want to model patience and control with our tongue over the things that we say. And then secondly, observing and guiding. It says she watches over the affairs of her household. For an empty nester, this means being aware of the needs in our children's lives. And maybe there's not as much physical needs, but there's certainly always spiritual needs and even emotional needs at times that we can take to God in prayer. And we can pray intentionally and specifically for those things in our children's lives. And then, of course, when we have grandchildren, the same thing for them. And then we can provide support. And if we do know somebody's sick and we're able to drop off a meal or send a gift card so that they can buy something at a restaurant, things like that. But making sure that we're not overstepping our bounds, but we're praying, and then we're approaching again with our wisdom, with our speech, being kind and being thoughtful. And then thirdly, opening our hands to the needy. It says in verse 20, "She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy." And this virtuous woman here in this season, we're going to minister to our children by teaching them to give by example. And again, hopefully we did that while they were growing up, but we want to continue to demonstrate generosity. And maybe, again, there may be times in our children's lives when we show generosity to them. They're going through a hard season. And whether that is, again, buying them groceries or giving them a little bit of money, whatever it is. But we want to then demonstrate also to them as we are giving to others in our community, supporting causes or missionaries through our churches. And I've got a few more practical applications for this. It says, when a child presents a problem, let's respond with thoughtful, reflective questions. For example, "That sounds tough. What are you thinking about doing?" Or, "Do you want my input, or would you just like a listening ear?" And if that's all they want, then we just listen and sympathize and tell them, "I'm going to pray about that for you." And sometimes I have even asked my daughters, "Is there anything going on right now that you would like for me to pray about for you?" And if we do give advice, again, we're praying, we're asking the Holy Spirit to give us wisdom and kindness. And then we talked a little bit about this, but maintaining a private prayer list for each of our children. And again, once we have grandchildren, and when we know that need, just taking it to God in prayer on a daily basis, and maybe texting our children, sending them a card and saying, "I've been praying about this for you this week." What an encouragement that could be to them. And then thirdly, this isn't always possible, but if you do have your family close by, maybe organizing a family service or a generosity project, maybe a time you can volunteer together, or again, a cause that you can all give towards. Maybe that's a children's home. I know we have supported one of those in the past. And of course, around the holidays, there are often a lot of opportunities for things like that where you can show generosity. So we're ministering to our husbands still in this empty nest stage of life as a Proverbs 31 woman, and we're ministering to our children. And then thirdly, we are ministering through our lives. I like what verse 25 says in Proverbs 31, "Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come." And when I think of strength and honor here, I think of inner resilience, of self-worth, of integrity, that our growing faith is producing this character and this fruit of the Spirit in our lives. And so let's look at strength and dignity. Our focus is shifting from our physical appearance to that inner strength and resilience. Again, as we get older, we want to take care of our bodies. We want to be healthy, and we have more time for that now perhaps than we did when we were managing a busy household. But we're going to have health challenges and losses that come with aging. But we want to have dignity. We want to model grace and show that faith isn't based on our circumstances, but it's from that inner strength that we have from the Lord. And then the fear of the Lord. Verse 30, it says, "Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised." And what a wonderful commendation that is. We want to minister by letting our lives be a testimony to our families, to our neighbors, to others that we meet of our faith. And we have years now, hopefully, where we have grown and where we have seen in our lives where God has come through, has proved faithful, and we can have peace and grace because of that. And then what a wonderful ministry to show that to our children and our grandchildren. And then reward and recognition. Our good work can speak for itself. We certainly don't need to go around talking about the things that we've done, but as our family, as others see that, what a testimony as they see our service for the Lord and these years as we're getting older, and again, hopefully have more time for these kind of things. What a testimony that can be to others. So a few practical applications here. Again, we want to continue to exercise and have a healthy lifestyle, not for outward beauty, but so that we can have inner strength and that we can have the capacity to serve, so that we can help others. And it might be a good thing if you're able to commit to a weekly activity that you can do. Maybe you're taking a walk, you're going to the gym, but you're doing something to build that outer strength as well as the inner strength. And then I like this one, maybe have a weekly priority check reflection. So basically go back and look at your schedule for the past week or the past couple of weeks and see if the ways that you're spending your time and your money align with your priorities. And is what I am doing, is that demonstrating the fear of the Lord and my walk with the Lord? And if not, we can make changes and do a better job going forward, so that our money, our time, whatever other resources we have, we're using those to reflect what our priorities really are. And then establishing a routine of service. And I know for me, sometimes if I don't have it built into my routine, it's not going to happen. So that could be a weekly volunteer opportunity that they do. It could be a ministry at church that you're involved in. Every Wednesday night, which is one for me, I'm going to be there and I'm going to work with the children's meetings, the groups that we have there on Wednesday night. But as we put that into our lives, that's going to help us and encourage us to be faithful in our service, even as we get older. And so I hope this has been an encouragement to you. I know it has been to me, even preparing this, just thinking about how now that I am in this stage where I am an empty nest mom, the opportunities that I have and the ways that I can continue to be a Proverbs 31 to minister to my husband, to my children, and then through my life, just to ask, Lord, what purpose do you have for me? And how can I demonstrate to others that I do have the fear of the Lord and I am the kind of woman that wants to be a virtuous woman? I would love for you to leave any comments below how you can see Proverbs 31 fitting into your life, whether it's just as an empty nest mom, an empty nest woman, and some things that will be an encouragement to you, and then we can all read those and learn from those as well. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.